Tonight, lifting the restrictions. Dancing returns and distancing relaxes as pandemic rules are eased across Scotland.
We are going to get mad with it! It's been a long 18 months! Freedom!
But the First Minister says it's not a return to life before COVID. She'll be live on the programme in a few minutes. Also making the headlines, code red for humanity. As wildfires hit Greece and Italy and floods hit Scotland, the world's largest ever report into climate change issues a bleak warning for the future.
In sport, a hero's return. Scotland's Olympians are home after a very successful Games.
And still game, people living in Scotland's care homes share the joy as COVID restrictions lift. I'm Sophie Wallace in Edinburgh.
And I'm John McKay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. Almost all coronavirus restrictions have been lifted in Scotland in what is the biggest relaxation of the rules yet. The legal requirement for physical distancing has ended in most places and hospitality can open at full capacity.
For the first time in 17 months, nightclubs also opened their doors, with partygoers queuing in the rain to mark the occasion well into the early hours. Polly Bartlett was there.
Nightclubs returned with a bang in Scotland this morning. Some couldn't wait a minute longer for their first steps on the dance floor and their first steps towards normality.
We are going to get mad with it! It's been a long 18 months! Freedom!
It feels like getting part of your life back.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, we've missed it so much, so we're so excited.
We've came from Belfast for the sunny weather and the big 12 o'clock release.
I think just like the culture, people mingling, like it's just a good vibe.
Yeah. It's actually so good, just enlightening to get back in touch with people, be sociable. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Well, the joy is radiating from the dance floor here at this nightclub in Glasgow. For some people here, it's their first night out ever, and for others, it's a night that's been 17 months in the making. For club owners, it's a day they thought would never come. They say lockdown has pushed them and their finances to the edge.
500 days with nothing is just such a long time for a business owner to try and navigate. So I really hope that, you know, all the clubs bounce back. The appetite is huge, and I just hope it's consistent. So I hope it's not a surge and then it goes away. I hope that, you know, we get a great few weeks and months here. We've got freshers coming up, which is huge for nightclubs, and then we'll roll into Christmas, and hopefully that will be a really strong time for us as well, because we need strong numbers through the doors for the next few months.
The busy streets were a welcome sight for the wider nighttime industry, which has been battered by 16 months of closures and social distancing limitations.
Actually, all people after drinking come here for food, you know. Last 2 years, we're not working after COVID and lockdown. The people come here, hopefully people come.
The whole year, more than a year, there was no work. For myself, I stayed in the house for more than 6 months. Without any work, so it's good news that things are getting back to normal. So it's a very excitement and it's a very cheering thing going on in the taxi industry, you know.
For some, these scenes might seem like they've come too soon, and they're not completely free of restrictions. Masks still need to be worn around the venue, although they can be taken off on the dance floor.
We've probably been the hardest sort of hit sector in the hospitality industry, so although it was a little bit of a surprise to get sort of only 6 days sort of notice to reopen, we were keen very much to just get going as soon as possible.
It's just such a relief for myself, for the staff, the owners, everybody, just being able to go and do what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to be in here making drinks and making memories for absolutely everybody out there, and this is the place to do it.
The past 17 months have been some of the darkest for the industry. For now, at least, their nighttime nightmare is over. Polly Bartlett, STV News.
Well, of course, it's not just at the dancing you'll see a difference. Everyday life in places like public transport, in workplaces, as shopping centres have returned to something resembling normality.
We no longer need to socially distance except in healthcare settings, and we can meet up with as many people as we want, as Lynn Rankin now reports.
Peeling off the social distancing signs for the first time since March last year. From today, public transport is back to full capacity, but masks are still a must.
We've been operating about 65%, and as you can see behind me, the seat coverings have been removed, so there is no restriction on where people can sit. What won't change is use of face coverings on bus. What won't change is the use of blocks to maintain ventilation through the window, and also our deep clean.
I'm basically phased returns. This is my first day back in the office, so I'm actually quite excited because it's been a year and a half at home.
Quite used to wearing my mask and stuff, but just seeing more people, it does feel like more back to normality, which is quite exciting, just seeing city centre busy again.
The ferry to Arran this morning was full for the first time in a long time, but passengers were simply happy to be having a holiday.
Well, we've had it in England for a couple of weeks now with no masks and everything like that, but fine. Put my mask on when I need to do. If I don't need it on, then.
Disappointed we still have to wear masks. Yeah. Totally feel safe travelling again.
At the Overgate Centre in Dundee, much of the one-way system is gone, with shoppers enjoying more of a pre-pandemic feel.
Freedom Day for us is just to get some kind of normality back after obviously the long lockdown that we've had, and it's not so much a restricted area. We've removed some of the barriers and some of the signage that we have in place for the customers, so it's more freely for them to walk about.
Today marks the biggest relaxation of rules in 18 months and comes as a number of people dying and the number of cases of COVID have been going down steadily for a number of weeks. For shops and other places reliant on people coming through the doors, things are finally looking up, and they hope sales and revenue can now begin to escalate. Paul opened his florist and plant shop weeks before lockdown landed. He now hopes his business can bloom.
We're all ready to go last year. We opened in February in time for Valentine's Day, and then we had Mother's Day, and then that was when everything closed down. So not the best start to opening a new shop, so opening and closing a couple of times. But hopefully now with restrictions easing, we should be plain sailing from here.
Under the new rules, those who have been double vaccinated and all children will no longer need to self-isolate if they're a close contact of someone with COVID, providing they have a negative PCR test. It's a change that will help fire up the hospitality industry, which has struggled with staffing.
It'll make such a huge difference because we can keep operating, but as soon as you're one person down, and it's the pressure that goes on the rest of the team. So it's really nice to just be able to take that pressure off everyone, and everyone just has to do their job rather than their job and then some more.
There's also a lifting of COVID precautions in places of worship in Scotland, including this mosque in Edinburgh.
Within the Muslim community, for our prayer, it's quite important that we pray shoulder to shoulder, and that's not been possible until today. So today is a very special day for us to be able to return to that.
Hi Pete, it's Chris Williams, phoning from the surgery in Granton.
But restrictions will remain in place in healthcare settings like hospitals and GP surgeries.
Although there are changes in what people are expecting to do in shops or other environments, in healthcare settings, we're still going to be cautious. We're still going to be asking people to wear masks. We're still going to be asking people to maintain some form of distancing.
While meeting some of the first 16 and 17-year-olds to receive their vaccination today, the First Minister continued to urge caution.
Most of the legal restrictions that have been in place for a long time now are being lifted, and that's a sign of the fact that we're in a much stronger position, largely because of the power of vaccination. So we should feel positive and optimistic about that, but we still need to be careful and cautious because the virus is still circulating.
So while today marks the beginning of the end for most, there's also a word of warning that the pandemic is not over yet. Lynn Rankin, STV News.
So most of the restrictions have been lifted. What comes next on COVID in Scotland? Our political editor Colin McKay is with the First Minister at Butte House. Well, COVID restrictions mostly lifted in Scotland today. It's 3 weeks since they were lifted in England. Now, in the aftermath of that, the COVID case numbers went up. First Minister, are you expecting the same thing to happen in Scotland? Are you expecting case numbers to rise now?
I think we've got to be prepared for some rise in case numbers. Any time we lift restrictions, we give the virus more opportunities to spread, and therefore there is that potential. But we've all got a part to play to try to keep that under control. Legal restrictions have lifted today. It's a good thing, positive. But if we all continue to show some caution and care and common sense, wearing face coverings, for example, we can have an impact. And of course, get vaccinated. That's the single most important thing any of us can do.
Now, a lot of businesses that can now open have been desperate to open for a long time. They're now looking for a reassurance that there's no risk of going back to another lockdown. Can you give them that reassurance?
I'm not going to treat people like idiots. We are in a global pandemic of an infectious virus. With every fibre of my being, I hope that we never have to reimpose restrictions again. But nobody can absolutely guarantee that. This virus has already mutated. There is the potential for that in the future. The one thing we know is that there are things we can do to minimise that possibility. Get vaccinated, as I said a moment ago, and continue to be careful and cautious. Let's not underestimate this virus even as we get back to normal.
But the vaccination's the turning point there.
Vaccination has been the turning point. It will continue to be. Of course, we've now started to offer vaccination to 16 and 17-year-olds. So message to anybody in that age group: from tomorrow, any drop-in clinic across the country offering the Pfizer vaccine is there for you. Please get vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Now, as things open up for most people, there are other people with long-term health conditions, things like long COVID now, who will feel that as a result things are actually closing down a bit for them.
Well, I feel very strongly that we shouldn't allow that to be the case. That's one of the reasons why, even although we're lifting legal restrictions today, we're keeping certain things in place. The requirement to wear face...
is something that people like that would like.
The requirement to wear face coverings. The advice we give to people, we can't keep legal restrictions in people's lives forever, but we're saying to people, if you're around people in other households, then if you can, continue to keep a safe distance. We need to keep doing basic things, take basic precautions to keep the virus under control. Today's a positive day. We should all feel positive about it. It's been a long time coming. But the virus is still circulating here and across the globe. So common sense and care is still called for.
Talking of common sense, you don't need to wear a mask if you're dancing, drinking or dining, but if you're at school you have to wear it for double maths. A lot of people think that's not common sense.
Well, actually it is totally common sense, and let me explain very quickly why. You know, if you're in a nightclub, then you're of an age to be vaccinated, and it's voluntary. Nobody makes you go there. But schools largely are young people who are not vaccinated with older adults, and nobody gives a young person the choice of going to school. So for a period, it's for the safety of young people and of course the adults they're interacting with that we're going to ask them to continue to wear face masks. We won't do that for any longer than is necessary. It will be reviewed after 6 weeks, but this is about trying to keep people safe. There's all sorts of things that I know look as if they don't make sense, but they are all about judging different settings and recommending the precautions that we think are right for every different setting and environment.
Very quickly, there's a dire warning out from the UN today about climate change. Are you still going to be supporting the oil developments west of Shetland at the moment, the Cambo oil field, for example?
Well, I'll say more about that in the next few days. We have to make a just transition away from oil and gas. Lots and lots of jobs depend on it, but there is a question, I think, about support for the current industry. We need that for energy and also their jobs that we need to support into that transition.
Like you are supporting it.
But I think there is a big question over new exploration for oil and gas, and we have to think about all of these things carefully, and that's what I will do. But today's report from the IPCC is absolutely a wake-up call for everybody, and people like me have to be under real pressure to make sure that we're living up to that.
First Minister in Bute House, thanks for joining us on the STV News.
And Colin, thank you. Well, staying with green issues, and global warming is increasing and humans are unequivocally driving the change. That's according to a new international report that warns more action is needed now to limit the effects of rising temperatures.
Glasgow is, of course, preparing to host the COP26 International Climate Conference. It's being called the last best chance to stop the worst effects, as Stephen Brown reports.
With wildfires raging in parts of Europe and America and closer to home flooding in recent days causing disruption and damage, the extreme consequences of climate change are real and becoming more frequent. Today's international report sets out some of the dire warnings about how our world may change if emissions are not drastically cut.
In the last report in 2013, really the evidence linking extreme heat, flooding, wildfires to climate change was inconclusive. But in the 8 years since that last report, a few things have happened. First, climate change itself has accelerated, so the impacts are now more apparent. And also the science has evolved, and linking these events to climate change is now more straightforward and easier to do.
Our reliance on fossil fuels has escalated the warming of the planet. This report from the IPCC comes just a couple of months ahead of the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow and warns no part of the world will be immune from the climate's effects. The aim is to keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees, but there's a warning we could reach that within 20 years. Scotland is aiming to become net zero by 2045, but scientists say serious action is needed now by all countries. The report lays out some stark changes to our climate. Global temperatures have increased by more than 1 degree since 1850, but regional variations have been much higher. And sea levels are rising on average at more than 3.5 millimetres per year in recent years. And there's a clear warning that time to act is running out fast. Environmental groups say it's vital that governments act on what is in this report.
The report is very clear that action is needed now and over the next decade to reduce emissions. If we don't do everything we can now to cut climate emissions, we could reach that dangerous threshold of 1.5 degrees warming as soon as 2030. So long-term targets are important, but we absolutely need to start that action here and now and over the next decade.
Harsher droughts, millions displaced as sea levels rise and failing crops. This is one of the hardest hitting climate reports. Time is running out to make a real change. COP26 in just a few months will be the most important yet. Stephen Brown, STV News.
The Piping Live Festival is back this week in Glasgow. Laura Boyd is with some of the performers, finding out why this year is more of a cause for celebration than ever.
Well, I'm at the National Piping Centre where Piping Live Festival is underway with events taking place here all week. And Finlay, you're the festival director. Tell me about what people can see.
Well, we've got something for everyone really, from solo piping competitions to some pipe band performances and some amazing traditional bands like Manran who are just sound checking upstairs right now. And
how good does it feel to be back?
It's amazing, just seeing people and hearing the music live and in person again is just like, it's such a joy after the last 18 months or so, so we're really delighted.
Well, you are doing online sessions. I'm going to give it a go on my chanter just now. Any good?
You're a natural. Perfect.
I think we'll leave it to the professionals. Take it away, guys.
Good to hear the piping again. Full of it, Rama.
I'd rather hear more from them than you, John, to be honest. Let's give you the sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's.
Good evening. Scottish athletes have been hailed for a sensational Olympics display after returning with a record 14 medal haul. The Scots in Team GB scooped 3 gold and 8 silver medals and beat the 13 medal total of both the London and Rio Olympics. Sheila McLaren reports.
A rousing reception for Laura Muir, returning home after her silver medal success. Following 2 weeks of competition in Tokyo, it's time to reflect on a remarkable Olympics, played out with the backdrop of a pandemic. And it's certainly going to be a Games to remember.
The Olympics is only every 4 years. I mean, 5 years this time, and it's just
everyone that's there, I think, is probably what they've dreamed of doing since they were a little kid. And so to be there, it's the whole thing surreal. And I don't know, I feel like it's almost mission accomplished to come away with a medal. And it would have been if it was gold, I guess, but we'll go again.
Team GB equalled its medal haul from the London 2012 Games, with 11 Scots contributing to the overall tally. There were medals in sailing, rowing, swimming, cycling, athletics and hockey. And there were some big milestones along the way. Duncan Scott became the first British Olympian to win 4 medals at one Games. Laura Muir's silver in the 1500 metres was the first time a Scot had won an individual medal on the track since 1988. And Josh Kerr's bronze on Saturday was the first medal for Team GB in the men's 1500 metres in 33 years. Kerr's time was faster than Olympic legends Seb Coe, Steve Ovett and Steve Cram, and just one of many performances that played their part in a record medal haul.
From a Scottish perspective, best ever numbers, 53 Scots in the team, 14%, and then a further 14 medals, which I think translates into 21.5%. So not only great result by Team GB, but also for Scotland.
The Games in Tokyo may be over, but there are only 3 years to wait until the next Olympics in Paris. Before that, the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham next year, and the chance for Scots to shine on the international stage once again.
Football news, and Stephen Gerrard says it will only take one match for Rangers to relight the fire, and he plans on this happening against Malmo in their Champions League qualifier tomorrow night. Following the loss in Sweden last week, Gerrard's side also suffered a defeat on league business at the weekend. Ronnie Charters reports.
For the first time since March last year, Rangers have tasted back-to-back defeats. Jamie Robson's goal for Dundee United last weekend, ending the champions' 40-match unbeaten run. But the Rangers manager believes the results should be put in perspective.
We only need one performance to light the fire again. I think in terms of our league domestic results, it was the first defeat in 40, if I'm correct. And our Ibrox form in terms of European games have been pretty strong. So I expect a good performance tomorrow, and we can quite flip the mood of the last previous 7 days with a real strong performance and the result that we want.
Despite the consecutive defeats, Gerrard hit back at suggestions his players fail to perform in front of crowds. With a full house set to be in attendance tomorrow night, he's calling on the team to use the atmosphere to their advantage.
Listen, we haven't played in front of a full house at Ibrox for a long time, so I'm sure their opinions are maybe from some time ago. I'm not too sure who said it or where it's come from, but it doesn't really interest me. We're really looking forward to a full house. We've spoke about it for a long time, and our fans have been patient on the outside, desperate to come in and watch us.
Malmo arrived in Glasgow this afternoon, aiming to defend their 2-1 advantage.
Is there more pressure, do you think, on Malmo because you're in the lead, or more pressure on Rangers because they're at home in front of a massive home support?
Don't you think that they need the Champions League's money here? I think so. I think they need that. I think that's a good answer, isn't it?
You want to expand on that?
I think you're all a clever lads, so you understand it.
Yanis Hadji, Fashion Sakala and Leon Balogun all return for the second leg tomorrow night, where kick-off is at 8 p.m. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
Kyogo Furuhashi says his Celtic Park debut will live with him forever, that after scoring a hat-trick against Dundee. The Japanese international opened the scoring in Celtic's 6-0 thrashing of James McKay's team before adding a second a short time later. His third came midway through the second half. Tom Rogic, Anthony Ralston and Odsonne Edouard were the other scorers. Golf news, and Grant Forrest has dedicated his Hero Open win to his late dad, who he says has been a massive inspiration. The Scot claimed his first European title at St Andrews yesterday, winning by 1 stroke. He was delighted to have family and friends see his success.
How much have you longed for this moment?
Yeah, I think since I was probably 13, 14 years old, this is why we do it. And it's not a smooth journey to get here. I've had so much help from so many different people, and very fortunate today to come out on top.
Well done to Grant. That's all the sport for me tonight, folks. Tomorrow's Sports Desk comes live from Ibrox.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's.
Well, it looks like the summer's gone. Here's Philip with the weather.
Blue skies and sunshine are in the forecast. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Well, thankfully, the low-pressure system that's given us all the heavy and thundery showers over the weekend and today is finally clearing northeastwards, and things turn settled tomorrow thanks to a small ridge of high pressure that's building across the country. It is very brief, however, as low pressure returns from the west come Wednesday. Now, as we head through this evening and overnight, it is a slightly improving picture. We'll see many of the daytime showers dying out, with clear and dry conditions developing quite widely. We still hold on to one or two showers, though, across southern
This is
and
ITV
News
with Lucrezia Millarini.
Over the day. Temperature-wise, remaining
ITV
mild for most
News
places,
at 10
around
with
lows of
Charlene
14 or
White.
15 degrees Celsius. Some rural spots feeling a little bit chillier.
This
Then
is
looking
the
ahead to
ITV
tomorrow,
Lunchtime
Friday,
News
still with one or
with
two lingering
Alice.
showers
This is
and
ITV
some
News
patches
with
around
James
the
May.
overall
ITV
a
News
drier day, meaning we'll
with
see
Alice.
longer periods
This is
of
the
sunshine. There
ITV
is still the
Lunchtime
risk
News
of one or two isolated
with
showers
James
across
May.
central and eastern parts, but once again, those
This is ITV News with Ranveer Singh.
Nudging up a degree or two thanks to the brighter conditions, highs of 19 or 20 degrees Celsius. Then come Wednesday,
This is the
unfortunately, we'll see further
ITV
clouds
Lunchtime
spreading in from
News
the west
with Romilly
and patchy
Weeks.
rain that will move erratically
This is the
eastwards through the
ITV
course over the day. It is slow moving though, so it does stay driest for longest in the east with highs of 19.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Kylie
TUI
Pantala.
sponsors STV Weather.
Finally, it's not just the younger generation welcoming a return to the dance floor. Residents of Erskine care homes have been enjoying indoor entertainment as a large group for the first time in 18 months.
Yes, and as Sharon Frew discovered, the excitement of being able to take a partner by the hand is lifting their spirits.
As soon as the music started, so too did the dancing. 3 days ago, this day room was a testing area for visitors. That's now been moved to another part of the care home. For today, the band is back.
Live music. Live music. Just to be inside, and it doesn't matter whether it rains or snows or whatever. It's fantastic.
It's a morale boost for both residents and staff of Erskine's 6 different houses.
We are starting to see that sparkle back in our residents' eyes, but it's been house by house, and to see everybody congregating together, it's just amazing. But obviously baby steps, we really need to be cautious.
Social distancing still applied and numbers had to be restricted for this first event, but there was no shortage of laughter.
There are still restrictions, however we will keep this under constant review and we will not keep these restrictions in place any longer than we need to. We're moving slowly in the right direction.
More family visits are now allowed, and one resident is eager to hear about the plans for the arrival of her new great-grandchild.
I'm so excited.
Happy moments to share after a long time apart. Sharon Frew, STV News.
Oh, a lovely way to end the programme. Well, that's it from us this evening. The late news is at 10:30.
All of us here, thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Good night.